Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Report. I'm Yasmin Khatun and I'll be taking a look at the stories that matter to you. We'll be taking a look at news stories from throughout the week and the ones that you've all been talking about. On The Report, we do love to hear what you think, so to join the conversation, get tweeting using hashtag The Report. Later on in the programme, we'll be going through the topics that have been trending throughout the week and also a special feature from one of our reporters, Sadia Chowdhury, who has been following developments in Syria. But before we get into the conversation, let's have a look at some of the week's news.
Former Lebanese minister Muhammad Dilwar, who opposed Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, has been killed in an explosion targeting his convoy alongside 4 other people. Dilwar, a Sunni Muslim, was also an oppositional figure and advisor to former President Saad al-Hariri. A restaurant and a coffee shop were destroyed in the blast and several cars caught fire. Witnesses said there was glass everywhere and the smell of explosives filled the air. The Syrian government has signed an oil contract with a Russian firm allowing them to drill petroleum in the Syrian international water. The contract will become effective immediately after signing the deal. Russia is one of the main backers of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who faces an armed uprising against his rule. Syria has lost millions of dollars in its oil fields because of the conflict between government forces and the rebels, and the government continues to state that its pipelines have been destroyed. Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan has reshuffled his cabinet, replacing 10 cabinet ministers after 3 quit earlier this week. This came as several high-profile political and business figures suspected of bribery and corruption were arrested on graft charges. Erdogan has claimed the probe was launched by international bodies and has ordered the sacking of dozens of police officers involved in carrying it out. Observers have linked the bribery probe to tensions between Erdogan and one of his most powerful former allies, influential Muslim leader Fethullah Gulen. The Egyptian government has intensified its crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood after formally listing the group as a terrorist organisation. The government accuses it of carrying out a suicide car bomb attack on a police station in Mansoura that killed 16 people and injured over 100. The move marked a major escalation in the army-backed government's campaign to suppress the Muslim Brotherhood movement. The army toppled the Muslim Brotherhood leader Mohammed Morsi in July. The listing allows the authorities the powers to charge any member of the Brotherhood with belonging to a terrorist group, as well as anyone who finances the group or promotes it verbally or in writing. Since Morsi's overthrow, the state has killed hundreds of his supporters in the streets and arrested thousands more. At least 350 members of the security forces have been killed in bombings and shootings, and the government has declared itself in a war on terror. Morsi and other top Brotherhood figures were last week charged with terrorism and plotting with foreign militants against Egypt. They could face the death penalty. The group has been outlawed for most of its existence, but this marks the first time the group has been formally designated as a terrorist movement. The news emerged just a day after. Egyptian security forces on Tuesday arrested the former Prime Minister of President Mohammed Morsi, Hisham Qandil, on his way to Sudan. Security in the Bangladeshi capital of Dhaka is tight as authorities try to stem political violence ahead of next month's elections. Tens of thousands of troops have been sent out across Bangladesh on Thursday after the main opposition has called for a demonstration on Sunday. Violence has gripped the country as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her ruling Awami League press ahead with the January 5th vote, even though the opposition have said they will not participate. With the BNP's boycott, more than half the 300 parliament seats will go uncontested, making it unlikely the vote will do anything to restore stability in one of the world's poorest countries. The Electoral Commission has confirmed the army will be deployed until January 9th.
Now with me to discuss some of those stories is journalist and deputy editor of online news site 5 Pillars, Muhammad Dilwar Hussain. Dilwar, your site has been covering the Syrian crisis since its inception. Lots of different things going on there, as we saw in the news, developments with Russia, developments in Lebanon, anti-Bashar minister, Muhammad Dilwar, killed this morning. Is this the Syrian crisis entering a different fold?
I think the Syrian crisis entered different dynamics as soon as US and Iran made a deal. And obviously Lebanon has felt the brunt of what's been happening in Syria. I think, however, the people who are going to be invited to the Geneva Convention, which is due in January, and the representatives of the opposition leaders, I believe is the SNC, there's going to be conflicts there because the rebel factions on the ground don't actually feel that the SNC is actually representative of the rebel factions on the ground. However, I think the actual turn in Syria has been that it's no longer about removing Assad. And personally, I've never felt that it was always removing Assad. It was about...
But it doesn't seem that that's going to happen anyway. The removal of Assad, the deal that was made with Russia, there were lots of comments coming out of Russia saying, well, you know, the Geneva Convention, that's going to happen on the 22nd of January, I believe, that, you know, they're looking forward to this. They're looking forward to how this may improve the situation in Syria, working with Bashar al-Assad.
Of course, like I said, the objective was never to remove Assad. I believe the objective was to prevent an Islamist victory. A victory which wouldn't be subservient.
What do you mean by an Islamist victory?
Well, overwhelming amount of the rebel brigades are Islamically orientated, and I believe it was the prevention of their victory which was the main objective of the West and Russia, and this is coming out now more openly. So whilst positivity is coming out from Moscow, I don't think the Geneva Convention will go down as planned.
Okay, well, we'll go back to Syria later after our special feature, but speaking about America, John Kerry is making some statements about Egypt. Is it a little too late?
Well, in regards to Muslim Brotherhood being...
Yes.
Well, it is too late because they've already been banned. Now they've been classed as a terrorist organisation, and this was inevitable, really, and the Ikhwan are now paralysed in Egypt. And the question is now, what next for Ikhwan? Where do they go? They can't go back to what they were doing before 2011. Any kind of institution, their NGO has been banned. Now they've been outlawed and classed as terrorists. What next for Ikhwan? That's the big question.
Well, the Brotherhood movement for a long time was an underground movement, right? And this is the first time they've been classified as a terrorist group or faction. But how does that actually change things? Isn't change things? Isn't that just, it's just a word, right?
It is just a word, but Ikhwan have been here before. During the 50s, they were outlawed and banned under the military rule. However, they did register themselves under an NGO called the Muslim Brotherhood Association. So whilst they weren't involved in politics, they were involved in civic society, charitable work, hospitals. Now none of that exists. Anything remotely affiliated to the Ikhwan has been banned and outlawed, and anyone found guilty of any kind of affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood will face severe punishment.
How is your site dealing with these sorts of situations? Now, I know media organisations in general, you know, that's also part of the outlining of rules that have come into place. They don't want people talking about this. They don't want people supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. It's now deemed to be a terrorist action. How does a media organisation react to something like that?
Specifically speaking about 5 pillars, there is no doubt that we are aware that what happened to Morsi in July was it was a military coup. They have been persecuted and witch-hunted by the regime, and this is something that we have to expose and something that we have to report on. The Muslim Brotherhood is a veteran Muslim movement. It's the oldest Muslim movement that's been around in the Middle East. So we are not going to hide away from the fact that they are being persecuted, they are being hunted down. Thousands of their supporters were massacred in Rabal al-Adawiyya in Ramadan, as we all saw. So yeah, of course, we have to continue reporting. At the end of the day, as a Muslim journalist, you have to report the truth. We're not going to shy away from anything that the media or mainstream media or pro-regime media would refrain from.
Okay, before we do move on, we also saw Turkey there in the news. Lots of interesting things going on there. Erdogan responding defiantly. He's come out, he's saying he's not going to step down. He's reshuffled his cabinet. He's got 10 new members coming in. Tell me more.
Well, the one in Turkey is a bit of a tricky one. What we're seeing is the reignition of Taksim Square and the protests that took place in May and June. And basically, the corruption scandal that took place involved 24 people that were part of the main Halk Bank, which is state-owned. Two of the sons of two cabinet ministers were found guilty as well, and well, not found guilty, they were caught in possession of shoeboxes full of cash. And I think the main demand of the protesters is that these people that were arrested, they were so close to the government. However, Erdogan is arguing that it's a foreign conspiracy, one that's been orchestrated by...
He's arguing that it's a foreign conspiracy,
Yeah.
But one of his own ministers said he should step down. It's too much now.
Yes, that was the environment minister. He urged Erdogan to step down, but he's on fire now. He's on a hunt. He's sacked 70 police officials. So this is showing that Erdogan has either got something to hide or defend, or it is, as he says, there is a foreign conspiracy, which he's saying is being orchestrated by Fethullah Gulen, who wields quite a bit of influence in the Turkish judiciary and police. But obviously, he's denied those accusations.
Now, Gulen was allied to Erdogan, right?
Yes.
What happened there? If you could very briefly tell me before we move on.
I believe he was exiled. He moved out because there was an accusation that he wanted to establish an Islamic State. But he's currently in Pennsylvania, and he denies these accusations.